Hi, everyone. Welcome to Bottom Syndicate. I'm your host, Joyce Strong. Bottom Syndicate is about people who have a story to tell, to inspire others to consistently, persistently pursue their potential. Rock Bottom is an opportunity to learn, change course, tell your story to help others and help yourself. Enjoy our show. My guest today here at Bottom Syndicate is Edward Zia, who is a master persuader and influencer. Edward is my mentor and coach, one of them. I have lots of them, and he is one that's very special who's helping me in this niche of marketing and reaching out to people. And he's really setting a great example of how you can go from being a homeless veteran and somebody suffering from anxiety and PTSD after a head injury to being successful in business. And he has found his way through telling his story, asking for help, and then sharing what he's able to achieve after having hit rock bottom. Enjoy the show. Hello, Edward Zia.
Joyce, it's an honor to be on your wonderful show with you and your very attractive viewers. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This is the Bottom Syndicate, as you know, and I'm so excited to be bringing this podcast to people because these are stories I've heard about people's lives that have hit a snarl, have hit some type of obstacle or a sense of being at rock bottom, and instead of folding, have turned their situation into opportunity. And so I had the idea to bring it to record these stories and share it with others to help people. It's what motivates me. So I just want to let my viewers know how I met you. I'm in Groton, Massachusetts. You're in Sydney, Australia. So I had to go that far to find help. Edward is a master what's the order? Influencer and master persuader and influencer. That's the right order?
Perfect. Perfectly said.
Okay. He is my coach and mentor and has done a lot to help really pump my tires up and get me pursuing my potential. And so thank you for that, Edward.
Oh, Joyce, it's an absolute honor. And I got to say, I am honored to be on your show. And as I was saying to you before, please roast me good and don't you pull any punches during this interview.
Okay. Well, you have very high energy. I thank you, by the way, for staying up late for me because it's early in the morning here. You may hear the roosters in the background. And it's 10 o'clock there for you. So we've got that time difference. I want to know, I've heard you say little bits about being homeless, and it was hard for me to grasp that because I didn't know you then. And when I hear you now, see all the things you do, I see all the people you help and how much you give. I'm just fascinated with how did that happen? Oh, and before I do that, can I ask you to tell people how to find you on social media that I did?
Well, the easiest way is to type Edward Zia into LinkedIn, send me a connection request and say, I discovered you through Awesome Joyce's podcast. That's all I need, and it'll be great to connect.
Awesome. All right. And I'll put that in my show notes as well. So I just want to hear what happened in your life. Like, what got you to this point where you're a master persuader and influencer?
Well, it's a great journey, and it's funny you asked this. I get asked this many times during the week, and what originally happened to me was I originally grew up never ever thinking I'd be a persuader or an influencer. I always grew up wanting to be in the military and work for the government and go into policing. So what happened to me was I was a 19-year-old young man, and I went and joined the army, as you do, went and joined the Australian Army. And I was a young combat engineer, basically a guy that would dig holes and put up fences and be basically a government labourer. Mm-hmm. And did that. I was very lucky based on my heritage to get invited to do special projects with Canberra. So I ended up as a very, very young man before my 21st doing undercover drug work with the federal government. So crazy years I had, right? It was awesome times. What happened to me though was no one ever told me that undercover drug work is really dangerous. I didn't know that at the time, Joyce. It turns out undercover drug work is really dangerous. And what happened to me, tragically, had a really bad sting. I got injured very badly, and I was very sick. I was injured very badly. It basically ended my policing military career.
What
And I
happened
was,
to you?
sorry?
What happened to you?
Well, I had a bad drug sting. Basically, as undercover drug stings aren't the safest operations. Had a really bad one where I got injured very, very badly. Got hit over the head very, very hard, and basically, I was very sick. I was in a coma for a few weeks, and I was very much on the edge of living. So, which is another story for another time. But yeah, I was almost dead. I was in a coma for weeks, and
Oh my
when I sort of started to come to again, I was not I was not a healthy individual when I came to from that. I was not healthy for a very long time.
So your personality is so much on the positive. You're always looking at the positive and framing it that way. And it feels like you're minimizing what happened to you. When you get hit, you're in a coma.
Yeah.
You talk about it like it's, oh, I was on the edge of death. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, what happened? So you had brain injury.
Yeah, yeah. So I was hit over the head very badly. It was the end of my policing career. I was very sick, and so what happened to me was that as I sort of left the military and police and sort of went back into normal civilian life, what happened to me was, and this is where the Australian government's very good. The Australian government was very good for me and helped me get back on my feet, give me money, and that sort of thing. And what was interesting in that whole experience was that as I got back on my feet, I ended up actually going back to uni. I ended up basically blocking out everything that happened. So the way I dealt with that part of my life was basically just pretending it never happened, just totally burying it, just not going there.
So
Right.
you didn't forget. You just chose to block
Yeah. However, there was this came to bite me later on. So what I did was I just chose to block it and actually threw myself into my work and I actually had a very successful career in corporate Australia. I was actually got up to marketing director for one of the casinos in Tasmania. So I was actually a marketing director for Rest Point Casino in Hobart. So you know Tassie Devil and Warner Brothers?
Yeah.
You know, Tassie Devil.
Yeah. The
I was
Tasmanian.
actually moved to Tasmania, where Tassie Devil's from, and I actually was helping run the casino there.
I thought that was a fictional place.
No, it's actually true. It's a lot like New Zealand. You know, Lord of the Rings, right? You know, it's all beautiful.
Yeah.
That's Tasmania, and just saying, Tasmanian devils are these little, almost dog-like creatures with whiskers, and they literally go. They're kind of cute in a psychotic sort of way. Right? Anyway, now, you made a good point, Joyce. What happened to me, and you would get this. So I actually had really bad PTSD, right? Really bad, complex battlefield PTSD. And what happened to me was that a lot of these, as I hit my late 20s, a lot of the PTSD that I buried all came to the surface around about that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of problems with relationships, with work. And basically those conditions ended up to me losing everything. Lost my relationships, lost my work. And I was unable to work myself.
Can
And
I ask what happened when that happened with you? Because again, you're like kind of glossing over, and I'm trying to dig in a little deeper,
yeah.
if I may.
Oh, please, yeah, please.
So it just seems like it happened so quickly. What kind of things happened with you with PTSD? Like what?
Well, what happened to me was I always had very high anxiety. I was always a very anxious, worrying sort of character at that time, right?
Yeah.
What happened though is that when I was about 28, 29, it started to all really come to the surface. And it was really, really distressing for me. And, you know, I don't know if have you seen Iron Man, right? With Tony Stark, right?
Yeah.
You know, he has panic attacks in it. You know, he just goes like that. And he's sort of, I was literally doing that about 3 times a day. I was having the worst panic attacks all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to have always really high anxiety all the time. Sometimes I could barely breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at its peak, 3 times a day, I have a full-on panic attack where I totally zone out. So really, really.
What does it look like? What does it feel like for you? Do you just like your heart races, or you freeze, or you?
Yeah, I'd freeze pretty much. What would happen is what was actually interesting about it, and sort of going back to unpack it, was that I would always be on edge, right? So you know how you get nervous about something, right?
Yeah.
I was like nervous all the time. I was stressed about everything. I was always just stressed out. Everything was, there was no depth for me. I was always like literally on edge all the time, right?
Yeah.
On edge, and which is very much PTSD. And what happened was that when the panic attacks really started to get bad, I would have trouble breathing. I would just be literally almost comatose. I'd be literally just zoned out, and it was very, very distressful.
Wow.
And it was very, very sort of a distressing experience. And what happened to me was that it got to the point where I had trouble functioning in everyday life, right? It was just really hard, right? I was still doing stuff. I was still going to work and putting on a suit and all that, but it just got worse and worse and worse, because I suppose what happened to me was that, and you kind of picked this before, Joyce, because you're a smart lady, I never actually dealt with the mental injuries I suffered, right? They were all just buried, all to sort of, come out of the closet later on to wreak havoc in my life. And that's exactly, and I've actually met a lot of veterans, is that once, let's say bomb goes off, whatever, you get injured, a lot of the mental anguish actually comes to you 4 or 5 years later. It's actually very, very common. I've met a lot of people like it. You get out, you actually lead a normal life, then you start to go basically insane later on, which is exactly what happened to me.
I hear that story as well, that there's an attempt to like man up and deal with it.
Yep.
Like I should be able to handle this.
Yes.
And then something, or just time, finally opens up that box, and there's an explosion of sorts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the pressure cooker. Yeah. So I think I've heard you mention that you used to weigh more. How did you attempt to cope? Was it through not caring for yourself, eating? Did you weigh a lot more than you do now?
It was funny. At the time, I actually put on my weight a little bit later. So at the time I was actually fairly slim at that time, interestingly enough.
Did you use any substance or do any other kind of help cope? I know sometimes people go into that path for a while.
No, interestingly, I'll come back to the food problems I had. The food problems kicked in later for slightly different reasons. I've never been addicted to anything, so I've never had. I didn't have any substance addictions or any. I'm not into gambling or alcohol. I used to play video games a lot. So you would say. So actually, at a fair point, I may have had a video addiction. That's actually a point, right?
Okay.
And so for me, what happened was, actually, in all fairness, I probably did have a video game addiction. I would say that was one of my coping mechanisms at the time. Now you're, making that really good digging point.
Mm-hmm. And you had also mentioned that you really got into work almost to an unhealthy level.
Oh, totally. So I was a complete workaholic. So it was like workaholism combined with video game addiction.
Yeah.
Because I've never been into drugs, alcohol, or gambling. It's just not my thing, right? I just never been into that. However, food did start to become a problem. Probably in my early to mid 30s, food then became a coping mechanism, and I literally went pop. So I wasn't too bad in my early 30s, but when I hit my mid 30s, I looked like a stuffed pig with an apple in its mouth. I was huge. I got up to 100 kilos, So just so you know, right now, I go to the gym. I'm about 80 kilos right now. I go to the gym 5 times a week. I know I look good, but I literally was 100 kilos, and I was like, that was the stuff. I used to have a lot of hair in those days.
Yeah.
And I actually had big hair, and I grew big chops, and I used to like a Elvis, Elvis towards the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a big Elvis fan. I used to go, thank you very much. I used to do this whole Elvis thing, right? And it was worked, actually. It was quite funny. I used to do the whole Elvis thing.
So at some point then you said in this journey you were homeless, and I've heard you say that.
Sorry, you go.
Yeah. I was just curious about when in the journey you became homeless and what happened there.
It was actually before that. I ended up, so it was about 28, 29, 20, it's about, 29, 30, around that time, is what happened was when I got really sick from the PTSD and anxiety, that's when I ended up becoming homeless. And so I was in Hobart at the time, which is that, so just so you might want to check on the map. So you got Australia. Yeah. That little island on the bottom is Tassie. It's Tasmania. We call it Tassie. That's where Tassie Devil from Warner Brothers is from, the little sort of creature, right? And it was in that point, that's where I went homeless. So what it was, I still had my car. So I wasn't, so at least I had a car, which is good. Like being homeless, I'll just say this, being homeless in a car is 10 times better than having no car, right?
Yeah.
It's actually not that bad in a car, just to make that point. And so what happened to me was that, so I had my car at the very least, and I ended up, I basically, when my life sort of fell apart in Hobart and things weren't working out, I then decided, where am I going to go with my life? What am I going to do? And I thought, I had two decisions. I was either going to go to Sydney, or I come from a Middle Eastern background, like an Australian Middle Eastern guy. I was either considering going to Dubai, basically Dubai or Sydney. They were my two options that I was looking at. And I said, no, I want to go to Sydney. So I drove to a place in Sydney, long story short, went to a place in Sydney called DY, which is this beautiful beach. And I lived on the beach in my car. So I was just a vagabond, just living in my car on the beach, hanging out with the British. Australia's all full of British backpackers and that. Yeah. I was literally just a vagabond living on my beach, just thinking about my life. What am I going to do with the rest of my life?
Wow. So then what happened?
During that whole experience, I spent a lot of time thinking about, and I actually decided what I want to do with my life. And it was about my 30th, because I was homeless when I was 30. Right? I remember being homeless and celebrating my 30th. And interesting, a lot of people are like, wow, you were homeless on your 30th. Were you depressed? No, I actually was quite happy, because in that point in my life, I was actually getting clarity as to what I want to do with my life, right? What I want to do. And interestingly, I'm 41 now, to give that some, say 10 years later, roughly. At that point, I actually said to myself, you know what? I want to build a full-time online business, and I want to be some kind of influencer speaker. That was my decision, right?
It just came to you like that?
Over about a month or two, I started thinking, so I thought, I don't want to just get a job and just be a corporate going to work. I didn't really want to go back to the government, because I was a little bit older then, right? Like, yeah, I didn't want to go back to the government or policing.
Yeah.
I thought, I'd love to be some kind of speaker, some kind of motivator, some kind of coach or something. And that's when I came up with that concept of what I want to do with my life.
Did anyone help you? Did you feel that you had a resistance to asking for help, or did you find anybody? Like, I found you, and yeah. I'm getting braver to ask for help, as my mentor and coach. Did that happen to you?
It did, but it was probably dispersed to a lot of people, because at that time where I was, living that life, I met actually a lot of very, very cool people at different points in my life. Mm-hmm. And it was through meeting a lot of different people, I was able to explore these new ideas. And I kept thinking, yeah, I want to be some kind of motivator. I want to help people. I want to do something cool like that. And that's when I started to really think about my life in a different viewpoint. And then the idea started to sort of crystallize, and I thought, I've got a long way to go, but I thought, this is actually possible. I could see myself doing this. I could actually see myself building a life doing this. Mm-hmm. And then I started just taking the baby steps in that direction.
So what were some of the initial baby steps you took?
The first initial baby step I took was actually, the first thing I did was actually getting a job, getting just part-time jobs. So I used to be one of those annoying guys that used to sell health products in shopping malls. Sell the back massages, the little heat packs, the ones that you click and you put them on your neck and stuff like that, and they heat up. Yeah. And little massage sticks. I used to be one of those annoying guys, right? And so I used to just work in shopping malls and stuff. Pretty much minimum wage, right? Minimum wage.
Yeah.
And money to just pay bills and actually live in a place. And what I then decided to do, what then that inspired me to do, was that I then decided to actually go do a course in coaching, and then I decided to start my coaching business just little bit by little bit. And I started taking baby steps every day. So I did a coaching course over about a year and a bit, read a lot of books, did a lot of stuff, and I just started putting myself out there as a coach.
So has this been your personality, you're so outgoing and maybe the experience in the mall selling the health products got you used to hearing no and resisted. I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Immune to
Yeah.
no.
It's funny you say that because I was only thinking about this the other day. So you're a great interviewer, Joyce. I used to be a much more of a quieter, sensitive guy, but a lot of the selling I did got me in the mood to become a coach. So I used to be a successful corporate, also like a failed corporate, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And that mixture of my corporate stuff, but also the sales experience, that started to make me quite more outgoing. And what happened was that as I got more into coaching, I learned how to retrain my brain over the years. So I used to be quite a negative thinker, and I retrained myself into becoming a positive thinker and going from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, which has been absolutely awesome.
Who are some of the people or places that you've learned that have influenced you for that? Because I that definitely resonates with me. It's I think we're kind of wired to look at the negative because
yeah,
there might be something, after us that wants to eat us.
Yeah, totally. There's actually two people. There were quite a few different characters, but there were two people that were really instrumental in my life coming together that way. And they're both coincidentally from the United Kingdom. I actually got coached and mentored by these guys. One guy is a guy by the name of Brad Burton, and definitely look him up. Great guy. Brad Burton has actually just recently got voted in the UK's top 100 most influential people. Wow. Right? So massive influencer in the United Kingdom. And one of his colleagues at the time, who has really now made a name for himself, is another guy called Stefan Thomas. So Brad Burton and Stefan Thomas, these two characters both really helped mentor me and inspire me. And a lot of actually even my own style and approach is actually a mixture between those two guys. So it's been these two characters that I've heavily based my style on, which has completely inspired me. So for example, you can see a Union Jack on the wall behind me, right?
Yeah.
I'm in Australia, so that's a British flag, obviously not an Australian flag, but yet it still quite inspires me. So those two fancy, fine Brits have really cemented my style. So it's Brad Burton and Stefan Thomas. So I encourage any of you listeners out there to reach out to them and look them up and tell them I sent you.
Is there anything that they taught you from your work with them, that anything way you could crystallize, or like the most important thing they taught you?
Oh, they taught me a lot of things, but I'll say the top three lessons to make it easy, right?
Yeah.
The top three things that I really got from both of these characters combined is, number one, and I say this to all you awesome listeners out there, is you got to believe in yourself 100%. You have to back yourself 100%. What I mean by that is that you don't do things half-heartedly. You don't just try something for the heck of it. If you do something, you do it properly. So if you're going to do videos on LinkedIn, you don't do one every fortnight, you do 3 a day. It's really throwing yourself into what you're doing.
Yeah.
So backing yourself 100%. The second lesson, which I really liked, was that really get into leverage, such as, using social media, it was more Facebook at the time, but these days using LinkedIn, for example, speaking at events, running events. So really having good leverage, so you got that full one-to-many occurring.
Yeah.
And the third key lesson that I really love was having your own unique style. So don't try and dress like the market. Really go out there on a limb and really unpack your own natural style, which is exactly what I've been doing lately. And it's been incredible.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely unique amongst people. You have a brand and a style that's fun, and I love the way you'll say things like, "Hello, awesome Joyce," and I know you're going to say it, and now it's like it immediately gives me that little oxytocin hug, that I feel good and I'm receptive. So it's a nice hack.
And it's good, and of course I mean it as well, and that's the thing that's important, and that's what I've been really exploring. Even lately, actually, not lately, but maybe about 6 months ago, I was actually really struggling with my own identity in that regard, and that, who am I? What sort of, how can I be more me, right? So for me lately, over the past few months, I've actually gone through a bit of a reboot myself in really sharpening who I am and focusing on exactly who I authentically am. And I think that's it. I think it's a challenge. Being different, everyone talks about it, being different. It actually can be quite hard being different, because by being different, you're putting yourself out there as a lightning rod. And I tell you what, the more you play to your own uniqueness and be different, is the more powerful you become.
How do you think you're different?
Well, I think compared to most other coaches out there, I'm higher energy. I say more stuff. I put myself out there more. I'm way more direct, and also my demeanor is more casual. So especially, I find not everyone. I got a lot of great coaches or friends, but generally a lot of coaches they'll put on suits. They'll put that professional sort of veneer up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that. I want to be real. I want to relate to people directly. So I suppose not having that professional veneer, so to speak, can be a confronting experience, because you've got nothing to hide behind. So for me, nothing wrong with suits. I love suits, of course, but what I mean is more metaphorically is having that suit, having that veneer, this is who I am, that sort of thing. Staying out of that is quite unconventional for a lot of coaches, especially a lot that you see today.
Yeah, I think at first when I met you, that there was that sense of just all of a sudden you were there, and you were sending me video texts and voice texts, and I wasn't used to this. And I'm a bit of an outlier at my age to be as hip as I am with Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm pretty hip, but still it was different. And but then it quickly turned into, he wants to really know me, and he's really letting me know him, and that's just precious. I love that.
Man, thank you, Joyce. And it's funny actually, because that style has helped me take off as an influencer, and other people whenever I've recommended clients that approach, whenever they've taken off quickly as well. It's funny, like the whole veneer thing, it doesn't work. Like maybe it worked in the 90s or the 2000s, but I'll tell you now, that whole veneer thing does not work these days. People don't like it. They see right through it.
Yeah.
People want to have real, honest conversations and connections. And that's such an important thing, especially if you're an influencer coach or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. It seems too, that idea of putting yourself out there, you are so available to people. And you said something earlier, you used a term with one to many. Is that how you said it?
Yes. Yeah, one to many, or leverage, we say. Leverage or one to many.
Yeah, so that's just math, right?
Yeah. So for example, common one-to-many strategies that I follow and recommend is like putting a video on LinkedIn is one-to-many. This podcast interview is one-to-many. It'll be watched by thousands of people.
Yeah.
Doing live webinars, one-to-many. Running meetup events, one-to-many. So the thing I've really found that's also really helped me take off lately is having as many leverage one-to-many strategies as possible. So the more, one-to-one's great, but you also need a mixture of good one-to-one, but also one-to-many, so you get that overall reach and everything as well.
And just tying it back to the beginning of where we started with the conversation, where you had a very tragic episode in your life that we might call rock bottom, and a brain injury, which adds another level of complication, PTSD.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's still residual from that. That doesn't go away completely. Those are takes a long time for the brain to rewire and to grow.
And also the discrimination that comes from that as well. Like I'm actually going to post about this tomorrow, but what happened to me was that I did a post yesterday. Every now I'm talking about being a homeless veteran, and I had a few people trolling me about it, right? Making fun of me for being a homeless veteran, saying that it sounds dumb and all this sort of thing, right? So what happens is that, whenever I talk about PTSD or being a homeless veteran, most people are pretty cool but you'll even get people that'll discriminate against you, they'll make fun of you, they'll troll you. So even though like 99% of people are great, you'll get that 1 in 100 lunatic that, has that bigotry, that discrimination that makes it hard, because again, I'm living with a mental illness, I have a mental illness and I'm living with a mental illness. And, you get people that discriminate against you for that. It's pretty crazy, pretty crazy. I'm sure you see this stuff all the time, Joyce.
Yeah, I do. And it's upsetting to hear. But I'm glad that you're able to have the support that you need to use it as leverage as well.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like, there have been people who've made fun of me for being a homeless veteran. They make fun of you for it. They think it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, people do laugh, or they'll say, "Oh, you'll never be able to," and
Yeah.
somehow that's been fuel for you to move forward. So I'm so happy I'm happy for that, because you've helped me and so many people.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's an honor. And the irony with the trolls, and this is what I say to all the trolls out there, not that any trolls will be listening to this because I blocked them all, but the irony of those with the trolls is that the trolls think they're really awesome. They think trolls think that when they troll someone, they're stopping them. No, it actually does the opposite. Whenever I get trolled, it makes me more radical and more extreme in what I'm doing. It makes me, it compels me to tell my story. So again, the more I get trolled is the more louder and more I echo the story, which I think is awesome. So the trolls, ironically, they think they're really smart, but they're actually achieving the opposite of what they're trying to do.
That's right. Well, I think, and we're almost out of time, so I want to wrap up. I just wanted to say that the opportunity to tell your story, I think, is pivotal. I think when a person finally sees what's going on and is just truthful and tells their story as it happened without shame, just seeing it's just part of life, and it's what we do with it is when things can really happen. It sounds like that's what happened with you, that you finally told your story.
Yeah, and it's been great. And I got to say, it's been a great story to tell. And I invite anyone to share their stories. If anyone, just for everyone out there, is suffering from mental illness, if you're lonely, if you're whatever, reach out, ask for help, and start sharing your story. The more you share your story is the more you're going to get over it, but also help other people around you.
I can't think of a better way to end this interview. That's just so beautifully said, and it's exactly what this is about with Bottom Syndicate. So, anything else you want to share?
No, I just want to say, Joyce Strong, you're an amazing lady, and to all the viewers out there, make sure you show Joyce maximum love as well.
Well, awesome, Edward Z. I love you, and thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you. Bless your hearts.